Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen here. This is C.Request for any new folks who haven't logged into the system quite yet. This is what your C.Request module will look like. I am in the test environment, and I also have some system admin capabilities here. So some of the menu options that you will have are likely the options that I have are likely going to be a little bit more than what you have available to you in your production environment. I will be specific in terms of which menu option that I am selecting or navigating to. And if you have a question about that, feel free to post it in the chat as well. If you can't wait until we wrap up the module, Julian will be kind of moderating the chat as we go forward. So once you log into C.Request, this is your home page. Your home page is broken up into the menu on the left side and then some tabs kind of on the center top of your screen. Every menu or every page in Comprizon Suite will generally look like this. Your actionable items are going to be on the left side. The different areas of which you're working on are going to be separated by these different tabs up here. So right now in my home page, I have a just-in tab, a hotlist tab, which is your bookmarks, recently accessed, which contain anything that you've been working on for the last 30 days. Your worksheet, which is like the complete library of everything that you've done in Comprizon. So I have some things here from 2017. And then alerts and messages these are just going to be messages that are generated by the system every time there's a certain flag or a trigger. Like let's say you have a financial transaction rejected or a document has been shared. These are just notifications or alerts that the system is trying to make you aware of. I believe if you also have your profile set up to receive emails, you'll be receiving those emails into your actual inbox in Outlook. So let's navigate to the worksheet. This is primarily where these tabs are primarily where you'll be accessing a lot of your work once you've created a requisition, and we'll go over that in a second. Notice that everything here, all these search fields are completely blank. If I just click search, everything will show up. It'll display 1 through 50 out of 287. So this is how many documents I have currently assigned to me or that I have created. Once you create something, it's automatically assigned to you. Or if someone else on your team chooses to request an assignment of a different work or a different requisition assigned to you, it will appear here. If you want to drill down and apply some filters, you can apply some filters here. There's a drop down for each of these different fields. So we've got a document type. I can set up, I want to see everything that's a requisition or status. I want to see submitted requisitions, procurement status. I want to see submitted requisitions that have been fully awarded. So once I do that, it narrows down even more. So you'll see here that it's displaying only a maximum of 87 records. So only 87 of my records fit this criteria. And you can save that as a default search. So anytime you come back to your worksheet, the settings that you just applied will be there. And then you can always clear and then reset user default. So if I'm looking for something else, I could do, for example, it begins with not sure. Let's do AA. And here we see that filter has been applied. So I would encourage everybody to kind of take some time to familiarize yourself with what exactly these parameters can provide you. The longer you kind of work in Comprizon, obviously, the more things start to show up. So you can also narrow things down by fiscal year or by a creation date or by a delivery date. Most commonly, I feel like folks use the hotlist or the recently accessed tab. Recently accessed is going to be anything that was opened within the last 30 days. So anything that's commonly worked on. So you'll see here, I've got some things. This is definitely out of scope. But I've got a couple things here that I've been working on. And then from my hot list, I can add or remove things from my hot list that will. So for example, this is something that was bookmarked. I'm actually going to remove from the hot list. And now it's gone. And so, for example, I'm going to just click into any of these requisitions right here, any of these documents. I'm taken to the requisition. From here on the left side, these are the actionable items that you can do. I'm going to click Add to Hot List. Requisition added to hot list successfully. I'm going to navigate back using Home, never use the back button. And if I click on the hot list tab, that requisition is right there. Does anybody have any questions about what we just went through? Okay, moving on. So reports and searches, this should be available to you in production. If you don't have this available to you, we can make sure that it is. There are some functions in here that are going to be available only to a specific user group. For example, if you're a core, or if you are an approving official like a BFNC or an FCO, you'll have different access. But standard reports, I think, is available to most folks, if not all. And this is just a good way to, or these reports are built into Comprizon by CACI. And these are, some of these reports are just kind of a good way to see what you're working on. Like you can do individual workload, which is just, it takes everything that you've got in your worksheet, and then it just puts it into an Excel spreadsheet for you to kind of manage or organize. You can see the requisition register. I'm not going to pull it just because it's going to capture every single requisition in Comprizon. If I select all dates, if I do a date range, you can select a date range. If anybody's interested in that, we can actually come back to that, but it does kind of create a bit of a load on the system. And you can sort by different filters here, so that right now it's by creation date. You can also sort by delivery date, FSC, PSC code, the status, the user. Some of these fields are probably going to be more useful or less useful depending on what you're looking for. Unfortunately, because these are standard reports that are built in by Comprizon or by CACI, these filters cannot change. We cannot add more report types to these, to this dropdown, to the standard reports. Some folks will have access to custom reports and custom BERT reports. These are ad hoc SQL scripts that are added into the system by CACI. There's a contractual limitation per quarter or per fiscal year, I believe. So if you can make a business case justification for requesting a report or adding a report in there, we can talk about it. But most of the reporting here in standard reports should get most users where they need to go or where they want to go. If you need like a higher level snapshot or a little bit more specificity, feel free to put in a ticket for in the portal, and Julian and I can try and accommodate your requests for running a report. Is there any questions about reporting so far? I'm going to take silence as a no. Let's explore Office Procurement Search and Procurement Search. So Office Procurement Search just limits you to being able to search for any requisition that was created within your own office. So for example, let's see if I leave this blank. These are all requisitions that were only created by users within my own office. So obviously in the test environment, it's just me and Julian. But if you were in, for example, the CIO office, or if you were, within one of the small bureaus, if you're in office procurement search and your search, for example, if I'm like an EDA, I could do this, begins with, and then everything would just show up from EDA. So if you're looking for a requisition that somebody in your, like a team member in your office has created, or if you were looking for like maybe something that got shuffled around, this is a good way to do it. Once I click into this, so like let's say I just searched for everything that was in my own office and I found, okay, this is the one that I'm looking for. I can click that blue hyperlink and it'll take me into the requisition, and it's going to look exactly the same way that it would look as if I created it. However, because I accessed it from procurement search, it is only read access. I do not have write access. I cannot make edits to the requisition. So every one of these fields is not open to be filled out. As you'll see, I can't type anything in here. I can't make any changes. It is in view only mode. I can, however, access any support documents if they do exist. And you can download those, and but you can't, edit or change any of them. You can't upload them. It's important to remember where you are in a requisition, because a lot of people use procurement search and think that they're in the worksheet. A lot of the search filters are the same. It does look very similar to the worksheet by accessing a requisition, but please just make sure that you recognize or remember where you're coming from within the system. The difference being, if I access this from my worksheet, recently accessed, or hot list, if I click into any of these or a new requisition, let's say, we'll do unsubmitted, and let's see what we've got here. These fields are now open for me to make edits to. So that is the big difference here, okay? Because this is a document that that has been either shared to me or that I have full read and write access. Let's actually talk about sharing now that we're on that topic. If you are working in a team and let's say you are going to be out on leave for a period of time, instead of requesting a reassignment of that document, you can request, or you can actually go into your requisition and click sharing. You can either add a team of users if you have a team already set up in C-Suite, or you can add a specific user. And you can choose to provide them with full access or view only access. And if I give this person full access to my requisition, they're able to access it from their worksheet as if they owned it. So an example of that, these are all requisitions that have been shared with me. I don't actually own these. These are all requisitions that Julian created. However, I can make any sort of changes that I need to in here. And I'll obviously get some errors here. But I can treat this requisition as if it was mine, but it's just assigned to somebody else. So this is a great way to kind of work within teams, or share it with a user that is maybe they need to, or maybe you'd like for them to give you like a second set of eyes, or hey, can you take a look at this, the way that the clin structure is set up, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great functionality. I think it's quite underused, but I just want to make sure that folks know about it. And again, it's just as simple as clicking on sharing, adding a team or adding a user. You can see here that I am currently added as a full access user with shared permission, but I don't actually own the document. This is shared by Julian, shared to me with full access. I can add a user and click view only. This person only has a view only access, which means it's read only, not write. Any questions about that? Okay. Let's move on to just a brief requisition overview. So when you create a new requisition, you're actually going to be taken to the administration screen. Now, this is a requisition that I've kind of already pre-populated. Everything with an asterisk is a required field. So if I remove something with a required field and I try to click save or apply, I'm going to get a red system error at the very top right here. That lets me know what is missing. So administration, point of contact, phone is a mandatory field. So because this field isn't filled out, I can't proceed. The system kind of locks, it's a soft lock on kind of progressing through the system if you don't have any of these fields populated. So just make sure that you're diligent about checking through this. And of course, if you aren't sure if you're missing something through these different tabs here, we have administration, funding, and addresses. You can always just try and save or try and hit apply just to see what you're missing, and the system will usually let you know. So let's talk about some fields in the administration screen that are pretty important to make sure that you're providing. Contract number and delivery order number, these are super important. So a lot of the things that we're seeing recently are that folks are, let's say they created a PR for they created a new requirement, maybe Q1, Q2, and now it's time to provide like incremental funding or an option exercise, like the 6 months is coming up, so we're going to exercise option year 2 or something like that, providing incremental funding, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever the case is, you need to make sure that you identify the contract number or the delivery order number correctly. Right now, there's a blank delivery order number here. So as a contract specialist, I have no idea what you want me to do, where you want me to put this requisition to. The breadth of the ESA work has expanded, exponentially over the past, 4 or 5 years. So it becomes increasingly difficult to kind of reference things like, oh, this is like this is the Verizon contract. Well, which one? Or we do a lot of things with strategically sourced initiatives. There's a lot of call orders here. We have to make sure that we're placing in the correct delivery order number, and that applies, delivery order, task order, BPA calls, et cetera, et cetera. Or if it's a contract number, so this BPA. So maybe this is fine. Maybe we're creating a new call order against this BPA, which the purpose is call order against this BPA, which is great. That lets me know what I need to do. But if we're not providing that information here, then the contract specialist, the acquisition shop, we're not going to have a lot of success, or it's going to be delayed just a little bit because we need to try and figure out what you're asking us to do. So let's just be clear about every single thing in the administration screen so that when ESA accepts the PR, we're able to process it in a very timely manner. And same thing goes for some of these addresses here. Our contracting office ID in production is SSD1. So just make sure that you're applying like the purchase for field, deliver to, et cetera, et cetera. If you have a question about any of these codes, or if one of the codes is set up incorrectly, this is something that we can change and we can make edits to. So feel free if, like, for example, all right, so this office is, we're no longer in room 6204. We need to change offices. Okay, great. We can add that. We can create a new office. And if you're not sure, you can use this little magnifying glass right here. And this will allow you to search through the entire list of offices within Comprizon Suite, and there are quite a few. But we can always add more. So just wanted to make sure that that is something that is known. And if I wanted to select a different office, let's say fake office 123 Fake Street, I can select here using this check mark, or I can input this code. Either one will work. So for example, I did that right here. I'm actually going to paste that code here and click the refresh button, and the new information will populate there. Supplemental address information is not a required field in C.Request right now, so I'm going to leave that blank, and I'll hit save. Requisition successfully updated. So that means that everything that I went through in the administration screen here in terms of required fields was fulfilled. You'll notice here that there are some blank fields, but these do not have the asterisk applied next to the field, which denotes that they are not mandatory. They're not required. These are obviously not required because, let's say, if you were, creating a modify or a PR to modify a delivery order, then it doesn't really apply to a contract number. Same thing for suggested vendor. You can suggest a vendor, but if it goes to solicitation or something like that, obviously, that's a process in and of itself. So let's go back to the summary screen and let's take a look at some of the snapshots here. So the summary is literally just a summary of everything that you're working on through the requisition. So from the administration screen, you can see that we've got just a summary of exactly what we're trying to do here. So it takes the purchase for field, when it's supposed to be delivered, who the POC is, what we're doing, what the purpose of this is for, and the document status and procurement status. We'll kind of get back to that in a second. But down here in the account summary, obviously I've already created and filled out some things here, and we'll make some changes so you can see how this changes in real time. The account summary is just a summary of everything that I'm doing within the line item section. All right, so everything on the left side, this is how you kind of navigate through the requisition and fill out more fields and provide more information. And some of that information gets captured in this quick snapshot. The reason why I'm kind of saying that is that oftentimes a lot of folks, if we're just reviewing or approving, we only check out the summary screen when it's more important to actually go within the line items or the accounting or checking out, perhaps some of the support documents and whatnot. This is just a snapshot. It doesn't tell the whole picture. And there are a lot of times where you need to be able to kind of dig a little bit deeper just to see exactly what's happening within the requisition. So I'm going to click into my line items now. We can see that we've only got one line item. If I click into this line item, I'm able to make any changes here that I need to. A lot of this information got applied from the requisition administration screen. For example, a lot of the addresses here, this is straight from the admin screen. Right now, it's not an option. If I wanted to apply an option, I could make it a base period clin or an option period clin. Once I'm in the line item, I can click into accounting and then go into the account code management screen. And from here, I can actually see or make changes to the accounting code. And this is how you're actually going to apply funding to this particular line item. So if I click again into the line item, I can make changes here. If I click on the left side under tools, accounting, I can create a new accounting code, or I can edit this one. And let's say, okay, we're not putting everything under here, so I'm going to make percent, I'm going to allocate by percent, and I'm going to make this accounting code is actually going to only fund 50% of the clin. So everything got halved, cost, quantity, and percentage. And notice that that reflects up here. And if I go to summary, I can see that a lot of this information has changed as well. Now let's say I'm going to create another accounting code. I'll make this 50% as well. And it automatically calculates based on what the line item has. We can see that each of these accounting codes reflect 50% of the cost and quantity of whatever you've applied here on the line item side. Now, if I made this, let's say a quantity of 5, and this updated to, you know, the unit cost stayed the same, but the total cost is now 6,000. If I hit apply, it keeps me on the same page, and I go to accounting. This is an auto-adjusted amount based on what I had on the line item side. The reason for that is the allocation here. I set the allocation to percentage, which means that no matter what happens, this accounting code will always reflect 50% of the line item cost and the line item quantity. If I needed to make this 30%, it would auto adjust again. Or if I made this 100%, it would be would reflect 100% of the line item. If I hit save here, you'll see that this is actually an incorrect amount that I can't use here. Okay, so trying to relate this back to your the BFNC and the FCO role, it's important to be able to go into the line item and actually see what's going on. Because if you just stay here, you'd see, okay, what's going on here? I don't really know what's happening, because the account summary doesn't tell you. It tells you that you've got 150% allocated. Allocated to what? Number of codes assigned to the line items. I've got 2 accounting codes at 100 for 50% total, with 7.5 quantity allocated. Something doesn't seem quite right here, because I can see here in my line items, I've only got 1 line item with a total cost of $6,000. In order for you to actually see in depth what's happening, you need to go into the line item. And we can see here we've got a quantity 5. Okay, this is fine, right? Everything looks good here. But we need to drill down even more. So I go into accounting. Here's the problem. I've got this accounting code reflecting 100% of the total line item. But this is 50%, which adds to 150%. So that's impossible. Reset this down to 50%. Click save. It seems like we're in sync now. And if I go to line items, back to summary, we've got 100% here, and everything seems to be in sync. Does anybody have any questions about what we just covered?
How can you have 2.5 items?
2.5 items. So that's a good question. The items here, this is what's more important in terms of your actual like contract. But if I go to accounting here, right, this number really doesn't have any play in terms of like how you define those. It's just kind of an arbitrary, like this is just an example, but I understand that like, for example, it would probably be better if it was maybe like 3 and then 2. But again, this doesn't get fed, the quantity doesn't get fed into CFS in that way. And again, if I pull my form, it shows a quantity of the line item rather than the quantities of the accounting code. So good question. I would just say whatever you have to do to make the quantities line up is what you're going to have to do. Don't worry about it being uneven. Like this could be, for example, a quantity of 1 and a quantity of 4, and this would still be fine because at the end of the day, we're still just seeing the quantity of 5 from the line item side. It's a good question. I don't very much like or care for how that's how the interplay there with the accounting code is kind of set up, but it's just how the system works. But good question. Any other questions before we move on? And we'll have time to go back and drill down if anybody has questions about how some of these line items are set up. Okay, I'd like to just note that if you know how the clin structure is set up on the award, you have to make sure that if you're creating a requisition that is modifying that order, that award, whatever, the clin structure has to be the same. So if you're choosing to modify, let's say option year 2, and option year 2 starts with 1001, 10001, or I'm sorry, yeah, 1001. You have to create a clin 1001. If I just created clin 0001 and sent it over, I, the contracting specialist, would assume that you are trying to request to modify 0001 instead of 1001. So we have to be very clear and very specific about how these line item numbers are created. The clin structure that exists on the award needs to be reflected in any other modification or any other requisition that you send over to request a modification. It creates some system issues on the C award side when you submit a requisition that doesn't follow the same clin structure. It creates kind of a messy way for the contracting specialists to take the requisition in and actually properly, figure out what we're trying to do, figure out how the line items are set up. So the best thing that we can do to make sure that what we are requesting gets done is to create the line items according to the already created clin structure on the award. So if you were modifying like 1001 and then also, option year 3, so I've got like a 2001 or there's like a subclin 2001 AA, all of that has to be created exactly like that on the line item side, on your requisition. It can't just be, here's 3 clins. I'm going to create 0001, 0002, 0003. What if those clins already exist on that award? Then I would just be assuming that those line items that you've created, 0001, 0002, 0003, those are the ones that you want to modify. And it's still a problem if you do, this is in 1001. That doesn't link up in the system. This is just text. In the system, it creates a linkage problem from C award, from the C award document to this purchase request. And if you need it to be 1001, then just create it as 1001. And if you've already created this clin and you need it to actually, oh shoot, I need it to be 1001, you can mark this clin and then click renumber single and change that line item number. This will ensure that we have a proper linkage between the purchase request that you submit and whatever award or post-award document that we're trying to create. So that's just something that we've kind of seen over the years, and as of recently, it's kind of crept back up. Just make sure that you're doing your due diligence and creating the clin structure properly in accordance with however the clin structure is set up or established on the award. Any questions about that? I'm going to be moving on to BFNC and FCO roles.
Yeah, this is Jan Gustafaro.
Yeah.
I need to change, I have 3 clins. 1002 will be exercised this year with funding, but it's the amounts for the other clins, all 3 of those clins are so I just go ahead and put them in 1002 and then 1003 and 4 with the new amounts. And then it'll be all reflected, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I think you cut out during kind of in the middle of your question. So you have 1002, then you have 1003 and 1004 that need to what needs to happen with those clins?
Basically, we're doing a fix to the contract on the pricing. We have some new labor hour based pricing. And so when I'm going to be exercising the funding only for one clin, the 1002 to exercise the option, but I was trying to update the task order for the other 2 to have the correct pricing in there, but I'm not funding them.
Okay, if you're not funding them and you're just updating some pricing, let's go back to this requisition example. So let's say 1003, and let's say I'm just going to throw out quantity 5, and let's say 25, and let's make this like hours.
Yeah, it's just going to be a 1, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, you put in hours and actually calculate from, I should put in like the number of hours there and then put in a per unit cost, or just put the whole thing in? Just put the whole thing.
Well, okay, so this is kind of a good discussion point. If you're just putting in one lot for like the bulk amount, how would we know what the rate is supposed to be? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, is the rate changing? Because if the rate is,
well, it was fixed price before.
Okay.
Maybe I should talk to you offline on this. It was fixed price before. Now it's going to be hourly, so it's going to be labor hours. So I've never set something up with labor hours before. It's going to be like 1920 labor hours. So you're telling me I should put that in and then put the rate in and let it calculate?
I would assume, I would think that that's the way that you should do it, because we would have no idea unless you told us. Does that make sense?
Well, I've talked to the contract specialist about it, but maybe I need to go back again.
Yeah, I would always.
I have a new quote that explains it. I just don't know how I was just going to put the whole total in.
Okay, we can, of course, we can always talk about this offline, but I think this is kind of a good discussion point to bring up for the group as well. But yes, I would definitely, I would always say, let's make sure that we're being as specific as possible. If it's a new rate, if you're updating like, something to
it's not a new rate.
It's not a new rate, but you're providing
the hours yeah.
Yeah. I think if you're able to do that, I don't see why you wouldn't do that. Instead of just doing like 1 for 1440, and then just putting in here like 1920 hours. The system will automatically do that. So if you need to, like, if the quote provides, exactly the number of hours and the cost per hour.
Yeah, it does.
I would put that in your quantity. I would make, this is how many hours, this is the unit identifier, I'm putting in hours here, and this is the unit cost. And then there's a total cost that auto calculates, from what you've put in from here and here, X times Y equals Z. So I would recommend doing it this way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the question.
Yes, and I'm interested also in this FSC and things that are not active anymore in those codes.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we can briefly talk about that. With the FSC and PSC codes, that's been kind of a sore subject as of late, just because a lot of the codes and a lot of the standards are changing kind of government-wide. And it's come to our attention that a lot of codes have been, are becoming active, and there's kind of like there's new codes being created. I would say if there's a code that you aren't sure of, create a ticket and we can try and, figure that out. Tom Cochran's a great resource to get like the actual new set of codes. So I think maybe we can come back to that. And if Julian, I think Julian has done a lot of work with the FSC and PSC codes. So if there's any questions about those, feel free to type it in the chat, and Julian, just feel free to ping me if there's something that you'd like to discuss.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go into this next topic. I'm going to briefly talk about realignments, but also use it as a way to talk about the BFNC and the FCO roles, or how at least they're defined in Comprizon Suite. So on the administration page, we've all seen this before. We go into the funding tab, and under funding, we've got authorization. So we've got two fields here, a Bona Fide Needs Certifier field and a Funds Certified By field. This is for your FCO, Fund Certifying Officer. So from here, if I don't know, like, for right now, Julian Wilson is set as the Bona Fide Needs Certifier for this particular requisition. Everybody has their own list of Bona Fide Needs Certifiers and FCOs. Sometimes Julian and I get asked who your BFNC and FCOs are. We don't know. That is something that is defined by your office. So I would really encourage, folks to at least try and, have a set standard, or have a set, like, if you're doing this type of requirement, these are who you need to go to, et cetera, et cetera. One of the issues that we have quite often is that, let's say we've typed this name in, and I've typed in the name differently, or if it's like a short name. This is not the same as if I had selected this person from using the search bar. So if I select this person, I'm not sure if you can see this pop-up window. It automatically will populate this field with the correct username. But if I'm just typing something in and I make like an error, like a spelling error, I'll use my name, Timothy Wynn, instead of Tim. The system won't be able to recognize that. So that becomes kind of an issue. We'll see an example of that in a second. But I just want to make sure that folks are using the search function. This is far, far more accurate. So I was missing this whole test thing right here. If I had done this without having that there, the system would have flagged this for an error, and I wouldn't have been, as a fund certifying officer, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. So I would avoid, like in the past, we've said, yeah, feel free to type your name in or type the name in, but just make sure that you're typing the name in correctly. It opens us up to far too many mistakes. I would recommend that folks just use the search function and try and search for this person. So for some OS folks, all of your fund certifying officers are going to be coming from OFM, or for the most part, I believe. And for the small bureau customers out there, you all have your set, BFNCs and your FCOs. So make sure that you're checking in with your group or your organization about that. But case in point, let's just make sure that we're using this search function and actually typing in, or instead of typing in the name, selecting the person to use here. So as a BFNC, right, we're supposed to certify the bona fide need. and make sure that we're going through and approving everything. And this goes for any approving official. Take the time to go through the requisition. So for every reason that we just kind of discussed previously, we can't really see a whole lot of information from the requisition summary page, right? I can't see any of the support documents. I can't see the big five or, an IT checklist, the IGCE, et cetera, from here. You've got to go in, look at the support documents, see what's there, see what's not. You can add stuff in here because as a BFNC, I can click into any of these and go in and make the edits as I need to. So what I just did here as a BFNC, I went into my inbox. Here's everything that is under my review right now. I can click into any of these and I have full read and write access. That is your role, or that is what functions are available to you as an approving official or as an approver. If you're, even if you exist outside of the FCO roles, right? This is something that the system will allow you to do. And I think you should take advantage of that. If you're requisitioner, maybe, all right, so we have a delivery order number here. It's actually not 0003, it's 0005. This is the one that we need. That's something that you can catch only if you go into the requisition administration screen. You're not going to catch that if you go into this summary screen, because all that's here is just kind of a snapshot. So what we just discussed before during that requisition overview, on the summary screen, it's just a snapshot. It doesn't go in depth in terms of, all these different fields here. Maybe we've got a wrong UNS or UNSPSC code. We want to change that. We're not going to see that unless we go into the requisition, right? Into each of these different fields. And again, just want to make this, drive this point home. We've got to make sure that we have the correct order or contract numbers applied here, right? It's very easy for us to just click copy on an old requisition, which creates a carbon copy. I can actually provide an example of that here. This is a complete one-to-one carbon copy of everything that we just did, everything that we had on that previous requisition, except for the requisition title. But the old information is still there. A lot of times we don't see this information get updated and it causes some issues. Okay, so this is something that we need to be very careful of. And it's not just something that a BFNC and an FCO needs to do. Everybody, can take a look at what this information or what information is here, especially if you're copying a requisition, and go through it and take the time to make sure that everything is set up the way that you need it to be. Because again, if you meant to do like 4, we would have no idea unless you changed it. So let's go back to this other requisition here. Let's talk about realignments. This is something that we've kind of seen pop up every now and then. But a realignment is essentially just a request for a deobligation and then a request for an obligation within the same funding action. You can create 2 PRs for that if you like, but if you can knock it out in one go, why do less when you could be more? So right here, I've got 3 clins. I'll click into the first one. This is the clin that's receiving money. So in the description here, I've got deobligate 1200 from clin 02 or 0002, deobligate 1200 from clin 0003, and then further instructions on what this new clin will be. This is information for the contracting office so that we know what exactly what we're doing here. And then if I go into accounting, I can see further in that we've got 2 accounting codes here, each one for 1200. For a full quantity of 2. I'm going to check out my second line item here and notice that it's $0. This is the clin that's being deobligated to provide money to clin 0001. Text below should provide a quantity cost and the accounting codes, and the example below deobligate 1,200 from this accounting code, blah, 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 blah. Notice that I've got 0 quantity and 0 cost here. And on this accounting code, I've got 0 cost and 0 quantity. And this is actually not even necessary for you to do. I could remove this accounting code. And since the accounting code already exists on clin 1, or that you've created it on clin 1, it's totally fine. And furthermore, you've provided the accounting code in the description of this line item, which will let the contract specialist know what exactly you're requesting from. Because let's say, for example, if this clin has 2 accounting codes, but one of them is, like we're only deobligating a partial amount from this accounting code, like from this project code, for example, we just need to make sure that we denote that. If you're just saying delete 1,200 from accounting, for delete or deobligate 1,200, okay, we'll take it from anywhere unless you provide us with exactly exactly what's happening. Sorry. So that's why it's important to have at least the accounting code in full provided in the description. Now, in this example, we don't have the accounting code in the description, and we don't have the accounting code here. So I would have no idea what to do, right? So this is something that, as an approver, as a reviewer and approver, we need to be able to go into each of these clins and actually check out what the description is. You can likewise also generate a form. And let's see if we can view it. Is everybody able to see this tab?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. Right here under clin 3, there's nothing in the description telling me what to do, and there's no accounting code provided. So I have no idea as a contract specialist what I'm supposed to do. The only thing I can do is like use context clues. I guess, this one is the same as, from, okay, clin 2 is telling us to deobligate 1,200 from this, or from this accounting code. Looks like clin 1 was provided the money here. Great, but I don't know where this is coming from. That's a lot of guessing. That's a lot of guessing. So let's take the guesswork out and let's just make sure that we have everything that we need. But this is something that, you've got to be able to recognize and see, because it happens frequently enough where it causes an issue. It's kind of a work stoppage because we have no idea what exactly what we're being asked to do. So super important to make sure that you're actually going into the requisition here and looking at this, right? So these two clins are deob clins. This clin here is funded, right? Because moving money is adding money, right? We do not use commitment accounting at Department of Commerce. Census does, but OS, NIST, and NOAA do not. So you've got to make sure that if you are obligating money onto a clin, if you are taking from clin 2 and 3 and putting onto clin 1 needs to be funded. If it's a prior year, if this involves prior year or multi-year funding, if this was like FY21, that's a different story. If it's prior year funding, then everything would be $0 because we can't commit prior year funds. That's just how the interface works. I know ITA kind of operates differently in that way, and we've obviously had kind of some discussions on how that procedure should work. It's a complex issue, but it's obviously doable. But just in general, if this is a current year funding money and you're requesting a realignment of funds, you have to provide a financial commitment here. So there has to be a funded accounting code for the clin that is going to be obligating money onto. The deob clins can be $0. So that was just one of the pain points that I wanted to kind of pinpoint and provide an example for. Does anybody have any questions about what we just discussed? We will continue to dig into BFNC and FCO roles in a second here, but I just wanted to make sure that we covered the realignments and going into the requisition and taking a look at the different, accounting codes and, what gets printed on the form. Anybody have any questions about that?
This is Jan. I have a quick question.
Yes.
If I have unused funds that need to be deobligated and I'm just a core, do I need to get with somebody to see if they want to reuse it? If the money, was, I guess I'm trying to think, it was obligated FY21, so it's 1 year money from last year. Can it be reused, and should I talk to somebody?
I will not be able to answer that question for you. I think that's a process that you'll need to work out with your FCO or whoever in your office. That's kind of outside of my scope. Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all right, let's move on. So as a BFNC and an FCO, right, I've received a document. I need to go into my inbox to actually access that document. So if I go to inbox here and I click error example, or I click any of these. Sorry, did somebody have a question? If you don't have a question, please make sure that your microphone is on mute. So into my user inbox management screen, I access this from you can access this from anywhere in C-Suite at any time. Click my inbox, I go to error example, and I click this hyperlink. So I'm going to be taken into this requisition summary. And from here, I can make any sort of edits and changes that I need to, kind of like in that example before. Now, what's important to note here, okay, so we've got BFNC here, and we've got our fund certifier person right here. If I go to manage reviewers and approvers, I can see that it's been approved by someone here, and I've got, it's currently review pending by this person. Let's assume that route order 10, just to make it simple, the BFNC always has to see it first and approve it first, and then the FCO gets it. So if I went in as a BFNC and I, clicked approve and all, et cetera, it would then flow to an FCO, or whoever's next on this route list. So if I try to click, commit here, actually, let me just see one thing. Let me make sure that this example will be applicable. If I try to click commit, who's ever seen just the screen flash like that before? A lot of it's happened to a lot of folks, but this pop-up has appeared. Can everybody see this requisition report that I'm looking at? Let me know if not.
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Give me 1 second. Let me just go ahead and fix that. I will share my whole screen. You should be able to see that now. Actually, give me 1 second. Okay, so if I just tried to click commit and the requisition report appeared. This is what usually happens when you see that screen flash. A pop-up window should appear, and you should make sure that you have pop-ups enabled for Comprizon Suite. So this requisition report is telling me right now that a local validation has failed. Bona Fide Needs Certifier name must be a Bona Fide Needs Certifier. So let me go back into my full requisition. Hopefully this will work this time. This is what's causing it. Okay. So if I go into administration here and I go to funding, so this user disregard the name for a second. This user is not a BFNC. And that's what the system is saying. So whether or not this person should be or should not be, that's, you know, maybe they should be, and maybe their user access just needs to get changed a little bit. But if again, let me just try this example one more time for you. I'm going to click commit as I've got my FCO hat on. I'm clicking commit. The screen kind of flashed, and then a pop-up appeared. And then again, it says local validations failed. All right. So if that ever happens to you, you have to make sure that you've got pop-ups enabled and that you're able to see what this requisition report looks like. Because this is the thing that's going to prevent you from being able to click commit. Now, the other thing is that just because I've clicked commit, and let's say as an FCO, I'm going to go just, you know, hit approve, that doesn't trigger the financial commitment. All right. Here's what does. And let me just make a couple quick edits here just so I can actually get to the point where I'm able to do that. If I click commit here, requisition report says everything has passed all validations. I'm now at a new screen. Transaction information and validation messages. Seems like I'm all good here. I can now click save and post. This is what will allow you to trigger the financial commitment. If you are an FCO, this is a critical step. You should not approve your requisition until you hit save and post, and until this sent awaiting response message changes to approved. I repeat, you should not approve your requisition. You should not be doing this step until you see that this message changes to approved, because it can come back with an error. So in this example, I tried to commit something, but it came back as rejected. And it came back rejected from the finance system. The way that I can see why it was rejected is if I go down on the left side of the screen under view status of the requisition, and I click this message, it will tell me exactly why. Now, some of these messages are more clear than others. For example, this one's fairly clear. The bureau code given is invalid, or the control level bureau codes, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's a clear-cut message. Sometimes they're not always that clear-cut. So I'm going to change this real quick. Notice here, I'm missing a character. I'm missing I'm missing one character in the segment right before my object class. I'm not going to fix it right now because I want to provide an example of what that would look like. So I'm going to try to hit commit here. Okay, my requisition report says it's all clear. It's not checking the accounting codes for that, because that's the accounting codes and the verification of that is a function of the finance system. So the system isn't checking for that. I close this out and I click save and post. This will take a little bit of time. I'll go back to my other example just so that we can see what happened. So again, this said rejected, please check. I can click view status. So here we've got line item 0001, MDL2, org code must be a number. Okay. This one's a little bit clear if you're comfortable or have some familiarity with the finance system or errors within Comprizon Suite. But if you have no idea what this means, don't fret and don't spend any of your time just trying to figure out what it's supposed to be. Screenshot that, create a ticket and post this message within the ticket. And Julian and I will be able to assist you with it. But for example, I'm going to go into my line items right here, and I'm going to see exactly what they're talking about. Right here, this is that example that we had on the previously. This was missing a character. This was missing a digit or character, essentially. So if you had gone in, if you go into the actual line item and then you go into the accounting code section, you'd be able to see that. Right now, this is kind of easily missable. It's not something that's, you know, super apparent. But again, the only way that you'd be able to see exactly what's happening is if you go into the line item and if you go into the accounting code. It requires you to drill down and dig a little bit deeper than just looking at the summary page or the administration screen or looking at the support documents. But it's super important to be able to go into the actual line items and see what's happening. And as an FCO or as a BFNC, again, you have full read and write access. If I needed to make some changes here, I could do it. So we're missing a character here. So I'm going to put one more 0. And we can see instantly that this is good to go. However, we've got an FY22 accounting code here and an FY21 accounting code here. All right. Now the interface didn't flag that as an error because it obviously flagged the missing accounting code segment first. But this would have been an error. It's not going to let you commit funds using a prior year accounting code unless it's $0. So I'm going to make that change as an FCO. And then now I'm going to hit commit. And again, we have a requisition report. It looks like everything's good to go. And I click save and post. And we'll just wait a brief second for this to come back as approved from the interface. Now, if I go back to my inbox and I look at my other example, this has obviously been rejected. These are just carbon copies of the same requisition. So if you are confused about where I'm going, I'll try and be more clear about where I am. So this was the other requisition that we had done previously that we tried to commit funds to. Again, this has similar issues. This is the FY21 accounting code. This is missing a character. If you had approved this, for instance, like let's say I clicked commit. I'll just try it again with the same errors. If I had clicked commit on requisition 6 here, and I go to my inbox and I say, okay, it's done. I'm good with that. And I click review and approve, and I click approve here, and I do my password. It gets moved out of my inbox. I no longer have access to that, even though we know for a fact that that requisition is going to have an issue. What that means is that the requisitioner is going to have to send that requisition back to you for review, okay? Because your approval as an FCO does not mean that the commitment went through, okay? I'm trying to drive this point home just to make sure that we understand that the interface, that each commitment requires the interface's approval before we can actually move on with the requisition, before you should approve it. And likewise, you can also disapprove something, and I'll provide an example of that. So let's take this random requisition, for instance. I'm going to click, let's see, actually. So we've also got a rejection message here. This one has even more issues with it. Invalid or inactive task code, invalid or inactive project code. So there's a slew of issues here. Now, if you like, you can disapprove that. And so right now we've got kind of a list of folks, a host of folks that are under review. Right now, I am under Route 30 for this requisition. I'm going to disapprove this requisition, and we'll see what happens to that. To this requisition in a second. So I'm going to click disapprove, and I can enter in my signature, password. I'll click comments. Disapproved for ACCS errors. And I click save. Now it moves out of my inbox. So as a requisitioner, I'm able to kind of see what happened there. So I'll go to manage reviewers and approvers. It was disapproved and there's a comment here. Okay, so there's some accounting code errors. Got it. Now it doesn't create a new route. So if I needed to add that FCO again, I wouldn't click delete here because the status column isn't blank. So I can disapprove these folks, or I delete these folks rather. Only one row, so I'm going to click delete on route 41 and route 50. And let's say I need to send it to this FCO user again. I would have to re-add them. Approval required, click save, boom. Now you'd have to release the requisition to that person as well. So if I click release, now this FCO has it in their inbox. So as an approver, if you disapprove a requisition, just make a note that that's what the requisitioner is going to have to do, right? An alert will get sent, or at least it should, for these rejection messages. And hopefully if you have your profile set up to be able to receive emails, see if I can do that correctly. Okay. Don't want to get locked out here. But if you have your profile set up, I have caps lock on, that's probably why. If you have your profile set up, there you go. For action alerts, you'll be able to see when the system, or as a requisitioner, you'll be able to get these emails when your requisition is rejected or approved by your BFNC or anybody on that route list. You have this preference set up, send email when items are routed to my inbox. So this will allow you, or this will allow the system to send those automatically generated emails into your inbox. Now, if you have these settings checked and you don't get these emails, sometimes you've got to try to work with your organization's IT help desk to allow those generated emails to come through. It's an email setting issue. It has happened in the past, so just something to be aware of. Okay. So let's check out this requisition, which now has an approved response. So when a requisition has an approved response, that's the only time that as an FCO, you should approve it. You should not approve if it doesn't have that. I click save here. Document successfully approved. So as an approver, that's how that process works. More specifically, that's how the BFNC and the FCO roles work. Does anybody have any questions about that? I know we just covered quite a bit.
Hey, Tim, no question about that, but Charlene had a question about how to do a proper DIOB.
How to set up a proper DIOB. Okay, so it goes back to that example that I had previously, where it was realignments. So if I check this, if I'm going back into this line item here, ignore clin 0001 for a second. Clin 2 is the way that we should have it set up. You should make sure that you provide the instructions on how much to deobligate from, right, the cost, and which accounting codes. So if you've got multiple accounting codes here, let's say deobligate. Oh, say 600 from project 0166. This would also function the same as well, but you want to make sure that you have zero quantity, zero cost, and that you provide instructions for what you want for that deob in the description of this clin. And if you want to provide the accounting code, that's fine. You have to make sure that it's a $0 accounting code, but providing the accounting code in the description would also work as well. So if you have like a form here and you're like, okay, let's just copy this. See if I can copy this. This would be great as well, because this lets us know, okay, we're going to be deobligating 1,200 from this accounting code and deobligating 600 from this accounting code. And notice that I've specified clin 2 here. I want to deobligate from clin 2. If you're trying to deobligate from like a different clin, then you've got to make it a different clin number. Charlene, I hope that answers your question. Jan, yes, you can. That would be an easy, thing to do, to deobligate all remaining funds. Can you add in a lower number such as 42?
That was on reviewers. If you can like sneak in a lower number and still not have to delete the other reviewers.
You can, for sure.
Okay.
But you'd have to make sure that before you can submit your requisition, everybody on your route list has approved it. So if somebody is there that doesn't need to be there, you should probably delete them. Can you please show what is necessary from the FCO/CO point of view? We were asked to do things like exercise an option before funding is available. Okay, great question. This is a topic that we've covered in the past, so that's why I didn't really go over it this time. But since it's being asked, this is a good time to do it. All right. So let me just go ahead and open up a different requisition just so we can have a kind of a clear-cut example. If I'm creating, or let's say I'm requesting an option exercise that's non-funded. Let's say it's going to be, let's say the clin is option year 2, so I'm going to call it clin 2001. Now if the clin already exists on the award, then all of this information should pretty much be already on there. So that, if you know that it's like 50, like if the quantity is 50 and you've got, 100 here as the unit cost and it's 5,000, that's fine. But all that information already exists on the award, unless it's changing. Like in Jan's example previously, where they were actually defining the rates. You can leave this as $0. And the way that I'm going to denote that is by going to option right here. And I'm actually, because I'm doing an option exercise, you should leave this blank. Don't select base period, or don't select option period. You can select base period if you want, but that's probably not, the most correct thing to do. I would leave this blank, because this is just already going to let the contract specialist know that we want to exercise option year 2. The other issue is that if you're exercising and funding an option year, and there's funding applied here, let's say, and partially fund in 2002, and you're providing, maybe just this amount of partial funding. If I select option period and call it an option period, if I select the option tab, sorry, and I select option period and, you know, enter in the option period that I want, like let's say it's 6 months. Okay, all fine and dandy. And I need to provide an accounting code. I can do that real quick. All fine and dandy from the PR side. However, from the funding side, as soon as you mark it as an option period, the financial interface is going to, the financial interface is going to zero out any funding that you have applied on that line item. So everything that I'm doing here in creating an accounting code and actually having a cost here all gets zeroed out because you marked it as an option period. Super important if you are trying to exercise and fund or just provide funding for an already exercised option. Do not mark it as an option clin. All right. It already exists as an unexercised option on the award. We don't need you to designate it as another option period. We know that it's an option. You can just say exercise this option. You can set it as a base period if you want, but probably not as correct. Again, these POP dates already exist. If you are making a change to the period of performance, sure, make it a base period. Let's say this is no longer 6 months, it's for the full year. The base period is fine. That will allow the financial interface to apply the full commitment to the line item. But when you set it as an option period, it gets zeroed out. You're not going to see it get zeroed out on here, right? That is a function of the financial interface. That's a function of the core financial system. You've got to make sure that you recognize this as either no period or a base period when you're trying to exercise and fund an option. Anybody have any questions about that? Just clear this out. Can you indicate the deop room? Okay. Yeah, so yeah, what Julian said is fine. What you said is also fine. I believe the contracting specialist will be able to, like, if you say please deobligate all remaining funds, hopefully there would have been, and close out the contract. Hopefully there would have been, discussion or communication with the vendor to stop invoicing against that, and then just make sure that you're providing the UDO report for the contract specialist, the most recent one, if possible, because there have been cases where we've been trying to deobligate and the amount that you've requested, but they're still invoicing against those some of the line items. So you've got to make sure that they hold off on that if you're trying to deobligate all excess funds. Good questions. Good questions. Anybody else? I think I see some hands up. If not, we'll go ahead and move on to. Yeah,
I have a question. Sorry, this is AJ, and I asked the question about the exercising an option, and
yes.
maybe I'm just overthinking it. So when we exercise an option before funding's available, we just say exercise an option, and then I guess we do a PR later on to fund it.
If you don't have the funding available right now, like if it's a SAF. Mm-hmm. And you just want the line item to be exercised, mm-hmm. Create a requisition that provides that line item that you need exercised, okay. Make it $0, and then don't put any option period on it because it already exists on the award. Okay. And then once you actually have the funding, that's when you need to actually just apply, like just create a line item with the accounting code that funds that line item, but do not apply any sort of option to the line item. You don't need to do that.
Okay, do we need to do anything specific, or we say anything specific in the administration tab that, you know, about funding, or like, you know, like when they exercise an option, do they like, does a contracting officer automatically know to come back and say, okay, hey, we exercise this, now we need funding? Like, or do we say something specific? Like, how does that?
How does the process work in terms of that? I mean, I think your office needs to be communicating. Like if you have sent in a PR that requested the option exercise but didn't provide that funding, I would think that you need to communicate with the CO of the contract for when that funding needs to be applied. And then once you have that second funding requisition to create a funding mod, you obviously need to indicate that for the purpose. This is to exercise option year 2, you know, subject to availability of funding, like this is for 3 months, et cetera, et cetera. The CO isn't going to know to do that, I think, unless, you know, that information is provided or, you know, there's communication there.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Because the funding is coming from, you know, from your office, right?
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Great question. Great conversation so far. Does anybody have anything else before we wrap up and move on? We're just going to briefly talk about some end of fiscal year little tidbits and some of the PR submission dates, which I believe that memo got sent out earlier this year. Okay. So let's talk about these PR submission dates. Let me pull up this PDF. Okay, so this was a memo that was sent out by Chris Wallace. I believe it may have been, back in October or so. You know, this document does exist on the ESA portal. If you just search PR submission dates, this will pop up. You'll be able to download that. I just want to kind of go over things, you know, quickly, just to make sure that we're all on the same page for FY22, especially as we wrap up and head into into the summer. Q4 gets super busy. So we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page for, you know, some of these items here. So it seems like we've got pretty set dates in terms of what, you know, where things need to be submitted and by when. So for new contracts, our deadline has already passed. So we've got just some summer dates coming up, and then just kind of smaller things coming. The deadline would be August 5th. And then I believe Chris's process or business process, I guess, is if we get things in late, we will try as best as we can to provide that service, but it's kind of a first come, first serve thing. You know, our priorities are our priorities. So if things are coming in late, there are no guarantees. Let's talk about briefly the end of the fiscal year shutdown cycle. Some of the dates haven't been released yet by NOAA and NIST, but typically what happens is that you know, maybe 4 to 5 days prior, or sometimes a week prior to the shutdown, to 9/30, you know, if that date falls on a weekday, those interfaces will close in order to reconcile certain things. So for example, I believe this year NOAA's feeder system will be shutting down 5 p.m. Eastern on September 25th. I believe that Monday, it's either the 25th or the 26th. At that point, we will no longer be able to send over any financial transactions. So commits, cancel commits, obligations, and de-obligations. So it's very important that, we're communicating, from, our customers to the contracting officers and contracting specialists to ensure that all these documents are being processed prior to that date. For folks that use the NIST feeder system, there's a soft shutdown, but then a brief window on the 30th, I believe, like from 6 a.m. to about 9 or 10 a.m. that day for emergency acquisitions to come through. I've seen some PRs get submitted that day and then processed that day. It's a very slim chance. I'll be sure to provide the dates as they come. I think some of the dates, some of the NIST and Census haven't, or I believe NIST hasn't had those dates posted in an official capacity yet, and the draft dates for NOAA say the Monday. I believe it's the 25th of September. The 26th at 5 p.m. That's when their interface is going to be closed. So that's how that kind of works with the end of the year, stuff. Hopefully, most of the purchase requests that we get will have already been submitted, but obviously it's kind of like a first come first serve kind of thing. We do try our best to make sure that nothing gets left behind, and I think that we've been doing a pretty good job of that in the past couple years. Because if we do need to, award something after the financial system has come down, what happens is that award becomes manually interfaced or unlocked. And that means that for the life of that award, every single modification to that award needs to be done by hand. It's only happened a couple times, but when it does happen, especially if that's like a pretty long, like 3, 4, 5 year contract, you can imagine how many mods that contract has. If all of those mods have to be done manually by hand, it does create the room for some issues to pop up. So just wanted to make sure that information was out there. That is the process, and it has happened in the past. It hasn't happened that often recently, and it's something that we like to try and avoid. Does anybody have any questions so far? Apologies that I couldn't get any of the dates. Some of the bureaus just haven't had the dates kind of set in stone yet, so I don't have anything to provide to you, but when I do, I'll be able to send that out. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I can give y'all about 20 minutes back from this meeting. And yes, this recording will be available and processed soon after the end of this meeting. We will make an effort to post it on the portal, but if not, it should be available through Teams for you to be able to view. Julian has posted the Enterprise Services portal page as a link onto the chat. So just one more chance. Does anybody have any questions about what we discussed just now, or if anybody has any requests for me to go over something, speak now.
Great training delivery, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, if nobody else has any questions, then we'll go ahead and give you 20 minutes back of your day. Thank you so much for, yeah. Oh, you have one more?
Yep, the difference between document search and procurement search.
The difference is you should use procurement search. You should not use document search. This thing doesn't, it doesn't really provide.
Great way to put it.
Yeah, it doesn't really provide any use. If I search for something, I can't click into anything. I can just see the document status. So there's really no point in using it. So that's the difference. One's useful, one's not. All right, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your day.